Well, hi, everyone, and welcome on into another edition of Navigating Trump 2.0. This is the show that takes a look at the big stories from the week that was in Washington, D.C. through the lens of the second Trump administration. I'm joined once again by CBN News chief political analyst David Brody and host of the CBN podcast Quick Start, Dan Andros. Guys, let's start off this week talking about President Trump and the Defense Department going after the cartels. President Trump this week said that he would bypass Congress rather than seek its approval for military strikes against suspected drug cartel vessels in the Caribbean near Colombia and Venezuela. Trump said, and I'm going to quote him here, "I don't think we're going to necessarily ask for a declaration of war. I think we're going to kill people that are bringing drugs into our country, okay? We're going to kill them. You know, they're going to be like dead." The president has compared these actions to I didn't pull it off with the same personality there, so you'll just have to use...
It's just so classic to read Trump in real time. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I feel like there's a dramatic rendering that could be done, you know, with a British accent or something that would make this more impactful, but you've got me, so I'm sorry. The president has compared these actions to striking ISIS fighters and other terrorist groups. And so far, the U.S. military has conducted 9 airstrikes on these types of vessels. Depending on the count, 37 people have been killed in these strikes. Some legal scholars question the legality of what the president is doing, stating there's no war authorization in place that allows him to do this, or there's no existing treaty that would compel the United States to act in this way. They've also said that there's no imminent danger, that some of these vessels have been at least 1,000 miles off of the U.S. coast, and that there's been no guarantee some of them were even coming to America. So that's some of the critics where the con is coming from on this one. David, is the Pentagon and the president, are they right in doing what they're doing from where you sit?
Wow, you're putting me right on the spot, John. Oh, that's Dan, over to you. No.
Okay, what's your take on the situation?
Thank you. Now I feel much better about that, John. Well, let me just say this. Historically, what President Trump is doing is really no different, to a degree at least, than what other presidents have done before him in terms of not declaring war. Not declaring this an official act of war and going through Congress. I mean, president after president have done this. So this idea that the president needs to go to Congress on it, look, I think there's precedent here to say that he doesn't. Having said that, that just put Rand Paul into some sort of smelling salt land, if you might imagine. And not just Rand Paul, but and it's not just libertarians, but it's obviously Republican members of Congress, too, in a perfect world. Now, having said that, it's President Trump, and everybody's marching to his beat, not the standard GOP beat. So politically, he's not going to get the pushback from his own party on this. He's just not. Normally, if he didn't have that high of a standing within his party, he might. But I don't think he's going to have that problem, other than the Rand Pauls and maybe a couple outliers. Now, an answer to your original question, is he doing the right thing? You know, I always think of the mom who lost his or her son, or the father, the parents who lost their son to fentanyl in Ohio or Illinois or Maryland or D.C. Just pick your state and pick your fentanyl type drug. This is a war on drugs. We've heard this before from Nancy Reagan back in the day. Of course, Nancy Reagan wasn't exploding, boats in the Caribbean and the East Pacific. But if you consider this a war on drugs, which this administration does, then the answer to your question in a long, roundabout way is yes. You know, it's okay. Now, having said that, do we really think, I mean, you tell me, but do we really think that they're just willy-nilly hoping for the best and kind of playing battleship out there and kind of going, all right, but ching, we hope we got the right one? I mean, look, there'd be a lot of pushback if they didn't cross their T's and dot their I's on this type of stuff. So you hope that's happening. But once again, I can understand the criticism, but ultimately I think sounds like what they're doing is doing what Trump does best, which is go for it and not play games.
Yeah, Dan, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it is a very interesting issue because on the one hand, it's very hard to feel bad for narco terrorists who decapitate people and, do all kinds of horrific things when they get blown out of the water for trying to bring drugs into America and to other countries. So on the one hand, it's very difficult to feel bad for them, and maybe this will make them think twice as they continue to try to bring these drugs into America and engage in all sorts of violence. So maybe that'll slow them down a little bit. Maybe cause them to have some second thoughts. But from an American perspective, there are so many things to consider, including the morality of just blowing someone out of the water. I mean, you think of it from like a drug traffic stop or something. If you caught somebody with a little bag of cocaine, handing it to someone else, are you then free to just blow them out of the water? I mean, it's an interesting question for sure, or just blow them away right there, like they're blowing them out of the water. I mean, it's interesting, like, because we know these are violent people. We'll know what they're doing is harming America. And so you can understand the logic in it, but is doing it this far crossing a moral line? And that's a question that maybe people can wrestle with a little bit more. And to David's point, I mean, this is, as far as the legality of it, I mean, this is, Obama with Libya, Obama with the red line, with Syria. And so we've seen this many, many times. Trump's done it. Biden's done it with airstrikes in Syria and Iraq. This one's just different because it's not in the Middle East. It's out here over the waters in the Gulf and, in this side of the world here instead of over there. So certainly raised a lot of interesting questions, but I don't think you're going to see a lot of people crying over it because it's narco-terrorists.
I think this has legs, though, John, because you mentioned Dan waters, and that's plural, right? It started in the Caribbean, and now we're in the East Pacific. So, as we broaden this out, I think there's different implications here, where it's just not, a boat from Venezuela, cruising past Aruba, if you will. And by the way, speaking of Aruba, I have yet to hear of any, you tell me, but I've yet to hear of any stories of concerned moms and dads out there that lost their son or daughter on one of these vessels to say, hey, all they were doing was going, to Aruba on vacation from Venezuela. They're very close to each other, or, something along those lines. In other words, we haven't heard that yet. You would think we would know. And John, you tell me, I mean, you follow news. I don't. I just show up with makeup. But the point is that, like, I don't know of anybody that has actually come out and said, no, you got the wrong guy. I mean,
we would have heard about that. I mean, we would have heard about that. Democrats are waiting for that for sure.
And it's been going on for a while. So it sounds to me like that means they probably are getting their targets, most likely.
Right. And I think I know Rand Paul's made the argument that you don't really know who's on these ships, but I think the point that you're making is valid, that we would have probably at this point heard if they weren't getting their man, so to speak. Right. Yeah. I mean, so that's I don't know that that's in great dispute. I think what the critics are arguing is that it is the precedent that it sets, because I think a lot of the other actions that we have seen presidents take when they were kind of going where they didn't seek congressional approval was because you were fighting under an existing authorization of war against terrorism, which you could kind of loophole Syria and loophole Libya into those different kinds of things. Or if you're going to go fight over when we were engaged with the war in the former Yugoslavia, it was part of like a treaty with regard to the Balkans, and we've gotten engaged in different things with NATO because we have existing treaties. And the argument here is that there is really nothing in place that would compel a president or allow a president to act unilaterally on this. But again, whether that's true or not, if Congress isn't going to do anything to officially step in and say, no, Mr. President, you need to get our approval on this, if they're not going to make a stink about it, then constitutionally speaking, the president can do it until there's a challenge to what it is he's doing constitutionally. And it doesn't sound as though the Senate is ready to take this on. Republican Senator James Risch, who is the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, said this week he does not intend to hold hearings on this. He does not intend to hold hearing on Venezuela strikes. A bipartisan Senate resolution, which is expected to be voted on next week, would prohibit U.S. military operations in Venezuela. So there's kind of they're making a differentiation here between what the president is doing and then perhaps some kind of military action in Venezuela. And that's, David, the next kind of place I wanted to take this is, could this be a prelude to regime change in Venezuela? The president using the military to try and force a regime change in Venezuela, a country that the Trump administration is targeting as a really the forefront in this war on fentanyl.
I mean, possibly. I don't see it. I think that might be a bridge too far. Having said that, to me, what's just interesting, the fact that we're even talking about how Trump would even suggest, or not suggest, but would even well, I guess entertain regime change in Venezuela. I mean, where is that in the MAGA playbook? You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's this idea that Trump is like this isolationist or even non-interventionist. I think we can throw that out the window. We're going to have to come up with a new term. I really mean that. I'm not trying to be facetious. I feel like Biden. I'm not being facetious. But
and that's what makes him, Dave, and that's what makes him effective, I think, on the global stage, is because there is an actual legitimate threat that he will do something.
Yeah, no, exactly. Dan, I know you wanted to say something earlier, didn't you, about the drug cartel?
I just wanted to, it's interesting because John was talking about like the impetus, like we already had like the kind of the war in the Middle East going on here. Mm-hmm. And there's an interesting aspect with the war on drugs. And I think, again, no one's going to cry over a bunch of narco terrorists getting blown out of the water. But the difference here is you don't have to engage in taking drugs on the war on drugs. So like there are many different ways to fight the war on drugs, right? Like, and I think the best way to fight it is to stop the demand for it. Because I think you keep doing this and it's good for, I guess, PR to show that we're doing something, but you are never going to stop the sheer volume of drugs that are coming over here. It's just going to always be there. You might be able to reduce it, but you're not going to stop it. And so the way to, I think, obviously it's multi-pronged, but I think if you just work on doing the things that make it less likely for people to want to take drugs in the first place, you would stop the demand and then you would stop a lot of this. So I just wanted to make that difference there.
Yeah, it could be head games too. Trump loves to play, mind control kind of head games. And so in other words, if you show the big, as we're showing on the screen now, if you show the big, explosions and blowups and all of that, then it could get those narco terrorists to think twice, not about the ships necessarily. I mean, they're already thinking about those ships.
Right.
But I'm talking about just some
Who's driving, not me.
Yeah, exactly. But the other tentacles involved in this, in other words, if they can kind of, I don't know how better to put it, but slow their roll on some of the other tentacles in their operation, that might be part of the calculation here by Trump just trying to show some force here.
Yeah, and it's something that's going to pull well with the American people.
Exactly.
I mean, it's an easy show of strength. It's an easy show of force, and it's going to pull well, even if it isn't as effective as, like you said, Dan. It's not going to stop the war on terror. It's not going to stop, fentanyl usage in the United States. But it says to the American people, I'm doing something about this, and that's going to pull well. And I don't think most Americans, at least so far, haven't cared about whether or not it's constitutional. So we'll see where it goes from here. Let's move to the government shutdown. We're on day 24 as we record here on Friday. No talks, no movement. Government shutdown continues. No end in sight at the moment. On day 23, Thursday, the Senate failed to advance a Republican-backed measure that would pay federal employees, military members, and contractors who have continued to work during the shutdown. 3 Democrats crossed the aisle to vote with Republicans: John Fetterman, John Ossoff, and Raphael Warnock. It fell 6 votes shy of breaking the filibuster, however. Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen tried to get unanimous consent to pass legislation that would pay all federal workers, including those on furlough, during the shutdown. He argued the Republican-backed plan would allow Trump to pick and choose who to pay. David, House Democrats are returning to Washington next week for their first in-person meeting since the shutdown began. House Republicans are planning a conference call on Tuesday morning. Is next week the week we start to see movement towards ending the shutdown?
No, next week.
All right, next question.
No, but I will tell you this. When is November 1st? When is November 1st? I think that's Saturday of next week. So, okay. Let's talk about the week of November 3rd, which is the week after next. That is when I think you may start to see some movement. We'll see. And here's why. Because November 1st is when those Obama care insurance, premiums, the subsidies and all of that, they're going to lapse. And at that point, you're going to start to see stories put out there by the mainstream media about, oh my goodness, I can't afford my premium. Look how much it's gone up. And we're going to start to see those stories trickle out, which will help Democrats. We're also going to see that there is the SNAP, the food stamp program, SNAP. They're saying that their money's going to run out starting right around November 1st. So you've got two big events happening right around there. And so the Democrats' best case scenario is that you see the moms and infants there trying to feed their families, and there are going to be stories about them at grocery stores, and I can't access my food stamps. Those stories, and then of course the Obamacare premiums, the subsidies run out, and you see those stories. And what if you're a Democrat, what you hope there is that will force Republicans into some sort of deal, if you will, some sort of framework of a deal. Now, to be clear, Republicans are definitely not going to cement or sign or do any deal while the government is shut down. That has been their position. And if they go back on that, then not only do they have egg in their face, but they got a 7-egg omelet in their face. So there's no way they're going to do that. But what I think you could see at that point, this is the best case scenario for Democrats, is to basically say, okay, you can see Schumer come out at a press conference and say, we've agreed with our Republican friends. They always call them friends. They're not friends. We agree with our Republican friends that we now have a loose framework. Watch for those words in the work week of November 3rd, a loose framework to begin to work on the X, Y, and Z Obamacare subsidies and all of that. I think that's where it could happen. This way, Republicans save face by opening the government, saying, "See, we never negotiated with quote the Democrat terrorist, if you will," and Democrats can say, "Hey, look, we got him into a loose framework. We got progress here." Now, the ultimate trump card, pun intended, I guess, is that Trump/Republicans can just say after the government's open, yeah, well, it was a loose framework, but that framework's now falling apart. We're not doing it. So, they always can play that card. But that's kind of how I see it potentially developing in terms of getting out of this. Otherwise, I've got nothing else and I've run out of oxygen.
Dan, Senate Majority Leader John Thune said Democrats are in a very bad headspace right now. The Democrats don't seem to agree with that, but I'm sure the truth lies somewhere in the middle. The White House warned of air travel issues coming up on Thanksgiving if this all continues. Now, listen, you interrupt people getting to their flights for Thanksgiving, you start messing around with travel, people stop caring who's to blame for this kind of thing. And so my question to you is, Dennis, do you think that could be a real motivator here? As we're starting to get down to holiday season here, could that change the calculus?
Yeah, I think so. And the polls are showing, interestingly, that in the beginning, kind of a little bit, it's not like a heavy favorite of it towards the blame going towards Republicans, but more of the blame was going towards Republicans. But that is shifting right now, and it's going more towards Democrats are getting more and more shares of the blame. So it seems like the longer it goes on, the more Democrats' blame is increasing. And so I don't know if that will hold when people start getting stuck at traffic over the holidays or over the coming weeks, but I think you're right. I don't think they're going to care at that point. They're just going to want to get to where they're going and say, someone make it stop. And at that point, it'll be in the interest of both parties to try to then be the ones not just avoiding the blame, but taking the credit for ending it.
Yeah, and that's I think it just benefits everyone to David. Like you said, that first week of November, that feels like the time that everybody's made their points. And now let's everybody starts to kind of move towards one another to open the government back up. But
I do want to say one last thing. Yeah. There is this other event happening. That would be the off-year elections, which I'm not quite sure exactly how that might affect the situation, but I think it could affect the narrative if Democrats do the clean sweep, which is to win the governorship in Virginia. Of course, Mamdani's going to win in New York. So that's 2 for 2. And then, of course, if Prop 60 out in California happens and, Newsom can redistrict out there, that would be 3 for 3 for Democrats. And that would give them some momentum and maybe put Republicans a little bit on, not just on edge, but on their heels.
Well, let's move on to a story that really blew up this week, especially at the end of the week. The East Wing demolition over at the White House. The East Wing of the White House is no more. It was bulldozed to the ground as part of a building project that's being paid for by President Trump and donors to President Trump and to this effort to build a new ballroom that the White House says will allow them to have larger events someplace other than the East Room of the White House. And for all of us who have been in the East Room of the White House for an event like that, they do need something. They do need a larger room because it's pretty tight. Trump says the East Wing, which was built in 1902 and then expanded in 1942, was outdated and needed to be modernized. But David, this is catching a lot of preservationists. They're not happy about this. Of course, Trump critics and Democrats, and there are some Republicans. I know Murkowski said that it wasn't a great look, but most Republicans are kind of shrugging their shoulders at this. This isn't the first time renovations have been done to the White House. You know, President Obama put in a basketball court. I think, was it President Nixon removed a pool or something like that? But critics argue that this is much bigger than those two different kinds of modifications that are going on. So is this story a big deal, David?
No. I don't want to use the word stupid, but I'll use it. It's a stupid story. I mean, it really is. I mean, John and Dan, you tell me, what am I missing here? What am I missing? So they're doing renovation at the White House. Okay, so you have a visual of the East Wing being torn down. Okay, can we go back to Harry Truman? I mean, Truman gutted the entire interior of the White House at the time and was using taxpayer money. There's no taxpayer money even being used for this. So if anything, Trump should be lauded for doing this on his own dime and other donors' dimes. I don't understand. Seriously, I don't understand. This to me seems to be in the sphere, if you will, of TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. I mean, if it was anybody other than Trump, I can't imagine this being such a big deal. If Obama was doing this, would there be this outcry? No, of course not. And then not only that, there wouldn't be an outcry if he was doing it on taxpayer funding. There wouldn't be an outcry. But if he was doing it with his own personal money and got some of his bigwig liberal friends to help donate, there definitely would not be any outrage. But Trump does it, and I'm a little confused. Here's the other part. It's not like he's saying, you know what, I'm going to take some taxpayer money and I'm going to go to New York, Trump Tower, and I'm going to take some of that money because I really need a new, bigger gold bathroom, there at Trump Tower or at Mar-a-Lago or wherever. He's doing this at the White House because he believes, as we stated on this show, and it's true, rightly so, that the East Room of the White House is just not conducive to big events. It just isn't. It does need to be redone. And this ballroom that he's talking about, the way Trump sees it, and why fault him for this, is that he wants America to look great and shiny and big on the national or the international stage. You get someone coming over, a big wig from X country or Z country, you want to show off the best of America and not just throw them with some gold curtains in the middle of the East Room, and with the air conditioning is iffy. I mean, so to me, all of the criticism is extremely unfounded, and this is definitely TDS syndrome.
Yeah, I mean, it's I couldn't agree more, David. And I mean, I think the images, I mean, it's like they're trying to show I don't know, like history trauma or something. Look at it's all in shambles. And it's like, okay, like this is what construction is. Have you ever seen a construction project? Did we think we were going to get through a Trump presidency without a construction project? But I completely agree with the logic. It's like you're putting in something there that is a need. And let's not bury the lead here too. One of the things Trump does that I think maybe people don't mention a lot, perhaps because of TDS, is he does have a lot of foreign leaders in. For a guy who was supposedly going to be hated by the world, he seems to have a revolving door of people showing up here in America at the White House. And I think if that, I haven't been in that East Room like you guys were saying, but if it was as small as you're saying, like I don't see a problem with this at all, particularly because taxpayer dollars are not being used, or they're saying they're not going to use for it. It's going to be him and some donors, private donors. So I really don't see a problem with this at all.
And let's also remember, by the time this thing is built, what are they saying? Another year and a half, 2 years, whatever it is. Trump's going to be almost pretty much out of there at that point. So it's not like it's for Trump. I mean, it's not like, it doesn't make any sense to me. The whole thing.
And he talks, David. I mean, you've probably heard him do this a lot, but if you watch him on these clips when he's giving tours to people, he obviously has reverence for the history of the building, the history of the country. I mean, you can hear that when he's talking about it. Like, he obviously has learned a lot about it just from being there. And, you have knowledgeable people there that know the history and know all the things. And he clearly has reverence for that. Yeah. And so, I don't think it's what people are trying to paint.
Yeah. And So here, I'll play just a slight devil's advocate because I hear what everything you guys are saying. I will admit when I saw it first, it struck me wrong. And the reason it did was because I think that the American people, and maybe I'll just speak for myself, have a visceral reaction to landmarks, U.S., big buildings getting demolished. I think there's an emotional attachment, whether it's right or wrong, that we have with our national buildings, right? And this, I think for a lot of people, it kind of felt like, because the president did say initially that it would not affect the East Wing, that the East Wing would not be touched. And then all of a sudden, it kind of surprised everyone that this building was being demolished to the ground. So I think there was a shock factor, and there was a little bit of thinking like, well, if you were going to do this, why didn't you tell us like that you were going to do this? Like, this isn't your house to do this to because you feel like it. And so I think that's where a lot of the angst for this comes from. There is just, when you see 1/3 of the White House getting smashed to the ground, there's going to be a reaction to that, especially when you were told that wasn't going to happen before. Yeah. Now, certainly, I think we can't really know what's going to happen until we see the fully completed event here, and that's part of it too. Right now, you just see a building, and you see demolition, and you see walls crash down, and everything else. You don't see the finished product yet, and I think that's probably until that happens, and that's not really fair to the administration because you can't see it until it's done. But I just feel like maybe this could have been laid out and presented to the American people in a different way so that it maybe didn't come as quite a shock to everyone. Yeah,
I think that's fair. I mean, it is fair because you're looking at obviously a historical place, but and not you, John, but people on the left who have just spent the last, 4 to 8 years knocking down statues of Thomas Jefferson and Abraham Lincoln. I mean, spare me that you love the history of the country here when you're knocking down all the statues of the founders all over the place. So, but I think it is fair because it is kind of like, it's the White House, right? It's the history of the country. And so you don't want to just be flippant with it. And, I don't know that he is, but yeah, I mean, it could have been maybe projected a little better of what they were going to do.
Yeah, I think that's the part I agree with. This idea of you lay it out and just say, hey, I don't want anybody to freak out here, but yeah, we're going to be doing some of this. And so they knew, it's all about expectations and what to expect. And I think they could have done that better, but that's just more like a PR situation, a communications thing. But the actual merits to this story is hypocritical, for people to say that this type of stuff is just traumatic. I mean, was it traumatic when Truman did it? Or was it traumatic when Obama did certain things? And I can just go down the line. To me, I think what the funniest part of it, because I'm always looking for the humor. The humor is to me the greatest part, which is Trump going, this is so Trump, when he was like, do you hear that? Did you see him the other day? He was like, do you listen to that? You hear that in the background? The sound of construction. Oh, beautiful. Music to my ears. And I'm thinking, that is exact. Everybody in America hates the sound of construction.
Yeah.
And yet Trump is like, that's music to my ears. And then he went on to say, because it's money. It's money. He goes, in this case, it's not money because I'm spending my own money. But my point is that I think that gives you, that's a perfect textbook example of Trump not only marching to the beat of his own drum, but he is his own man. He is his own person. You might not like it, but that is why he got elected. That construction comment is a microcosm of why he got elected, because Trump will say what he wants to say and his inside voice will be projected outside. Now, I will say this, that sometimes we don't want to hear the inside voice. Okay, I got it. But he's authentic. He's authentic. And everybody talks about, the fact checker and the lie meter and the whole thing. Forget it. Americans, I'm talking about Americans that are willing to give him a shot and not be part of TDS, the TDS movement. They understand that he is authentic. Look at the cabinet meetings, the 3-hour cabinet meetings where he just lets it roll. I mean, a president should not say, I love the sound of construction, because normally you would think, boy, if I say that, I'm not going to appeal to ordinary Americans. He didn't give a crap. He's going to just say what he says. And that's why he got elected, guys. I'm telling you, it is totally counterintuitive. You might think in your brain, well, that's just stupid. He shouldn't say that. But that's exactly why he got elected. And if he didn't have lines like that throughout the campaign, he wouldn't have gotten elected. There's no way. There's no way he would have gotten elected, because America is tired of the two thumbs up, and we're going to send a bipartisan task force into Israel and the Middle East, and we're going to work with our diplomats. And Trump's like, forget that. I'm sending Kushner, Witkoff, because they're business guys. And what do the Arab nations need? Okay, Qatar, you need that? Great. We'll give you that. And I tell you what, we'll build you a base here if you do this. I mean, it's totally stuff that we normally would not see, but he doesn't care. And I think we got to a point in America where Americans were fed up with the status quo. And I've gone on.
Yeah. No, that's good. I was just going to say, him being his own man and all that is definitely, I agree. But if he makes a giant gold sign and puts the Trump Taj Mahal White House on top of the thing, that'll be the line for me. I will definitely join in the complaining if that happens.
And let's not pretend like that's off the table. All right, let's just.
You never know.
No, actually, but it's true. Well, what is this ballroom going to be named? Is it going to be the Trump Ballroom?
Oh no,
it's going to be the Trump Ballroom. There's no way.
No,
it's
but
not.
seriously, it probably will. I mean, I would think 90% it's going to be. But then again, you do have. I'm trying to think of what you have within the White House grounds. Do you have things named after presidents? You probably do.
Lincoln bedroom.
Oh yeah.
I mean, listen, if they name it after, that's fine as long as it's a little plaque, right? If it's a little plaque in there somewhere.
It ain't going to be a little plaque.
No, I mean, it's going to be a gold sign on top. Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
All right. I want to ask, I want to ask one more quick thing about this. Do Democrats have some ammunition here? Because they're making the argument that Trump is focused on creating this $300 million ballroom during a government shutdown and he's not doing anything about the high cost of living. Is there any, neither of you guys can answer this, is there any traction to that?
No.
Not yet. I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Well, I think, this feels like one of the 1 week stories. Sometimes we're on here and we talk about these stories and they last for a couple of 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Sometimes they go on. And then there is those stories. We talk about them 1 week. I'll bet if we went and listened to a show we did back in May, we're like, man, I can't believe we talked about that. This feels like one of those. But we'll see how it all shakes out here during the course of the weekend and into next week. Until we speak again, David, Brody, Dan Andros, thanks once again for joining me here on Navigating Trump 2.0.